For centuries, the Roman Empire stood as an unyielding colossus, its legions conquering every external foe, its authority stretching across a vast, formidable dominion. But what happens when the greatest threat to such an empire arises not from barbarian hordes, but from its very heart, its sacred core? This is the story of Caligula, a name synonymous with absolute power, whose reign plunged Rome into a tyranny so profound it threatened to unravel the Republic's very foundations. Rome, the eternal city, suddenly found itself wrestling with an unthinkable enemy, a living god, cloaked in imperial purple, yet consumed by an escalating, terrifying madness. Initially hailed as a prodigy, the son of the revered Germanicus, Caligula quickly began to shed his facade, revealing a psyche untethered from reason or tradition. Expert historians have meticulously documented this chilling transformation, observing how initial eccentricities rapidly spiraled into acts of breathtaking cruelty and debasement. How does a civilization, built on laws and order, confront an emperor who declares himself divine, demanding worship and wielding absolute unchecked power? This was not a war of spears and shields, but an insidious struggle against a tyrannical will that permeated every aspect of Roman life, from the Senate to the streets. The empire, so adept at crushing external rebellions, was now utterly vulnerable, grappling with a moral and political asymmetry unseen in its storied history. Senators, once pillars of Roman governance, found themselves paralyzed by fear, their dignity and lives hanging by the whims of a single, unpredictable man. The central question that reverberated through the forum and the villas was terrifyingly simple. How do you resist a living god without tearing the empire apart? This segment will delve deep into the initial tremors of unrest, the whispered discontents that slowly began to challenge the emperor's terrifying authority. We will explore the subtle, yet profound, dawning realization among the Roman populace that their revered leader had become their gravest, most immediate danger. The weight of Caligula's shadow grew heavier with each passing day, casting a pall of dread over what was once the epitome of civilization and order. This narrative is a testament to human resilience, detailing how even in the darkest corners of absolute power, the spark of resistance refuses to be extinguished. Join us as we uncover how Rome, the seemingly invincible, began its desperate, dangerous fight against the madness within its own imperial heart. After the monumental reign of Augustus, Rome found itself navigating an unprecedented era, a Pax Romana bought at the cost of traditional republican liberties. The architect of the Principate had meticulously crafted an illusion of shared governance. Yet the reins of ultimate authority remained firmly in imperial hands. His successors inherited not just an empire, but a fragile system, perpetually teetering between stability and the precipice of autocratic collapse. The very concept of a Roman emperor was still nascent, its boundaries undefined, its power both immense and inherently precarious. This was a Rome where the shadow of republican ideals still lingered, battling the ever-growing reality of a monarchical state in all but name. At the heart of this delicate power dynamic lay a complex interplay of forces, each vying for influence, yet all ultimately subservient to the imperial will. The venerable Senate, once the bedrock of Roman governance, had been largely reduced to a rubber-stamping body, its ancient gravitas diminished. Yet its symbolic authority remained potent, a constant reminder of a past glory and a potential source of legitimacy or, conversely, dangerous opposition. Then there was the formidable Praetorian Guard, the elite personal protectors of the emperor, strategically stationed within Rome itself. Their loyalty, a double-edged sword, could secure an emperor's reign or, as history would repeatedly prove, swiftly bring it to a brutal end. Finally, the imperial family, a web of ambitious relatives, held immense sway, their bloodlines dictating succession and their rivalries often spilling into lethal power struggles. This intricate, often treacherous dance between these factions formed the volatile political stage upon which all imperial drama would unfold. It was into this gilded, yet treacherous world that Gaius Julius Caesar Germanicus, better known as Caligula, was born in AD 12. He was the son of Germanicus, a revered military hero and adopted grandson of Augustus, and Agrippina the Elder, a fiercely proud descendant of the Imperial line. His early years were spent amidst army camps, where the soldiers, endeared by his miniature legionary uniform, affectionately nicknamed him Caligula, meaning little boot. This childhood, a stark contrast to the sheltered existence of many imperial heirs, instilled in him a unique connection with the legions. However, it was also marred by profound personal tragedy, witnessing the suspicious deaths of his parents and the brutal exile of his siblings. He grew up under the watchful, often paranoid eye of Emperor Tiberius, a man whose trust was elusive and whose favor could vanish in an instant. Despite these harrowing early experiences, Caligula's ascension to the purple in AD 37 was met with an outpouring of unprecedented public euphoria. Rome, weary from the austere, often grim reign of Tiberius, yearned for a fresh start, a charismatic figure to restore a sense of imperial vibrancy. Caligula, with his distinguished lineage and a public image untainted by his predecessors' perceived vices, seemed to be that very man. He began his reign with acts of clemency, recalling exiles, abolishing unpopular taxes, and hosting extravagant games that captivated the populace. The Senate, eager to curry favor, showered him with honors, and the Praetorian Guard readily pledged their fealty, ensuring a smooth transition of power. He was hailed as a savior, a beacon of hope after years of perceived tyranny, embodying the promise of a golden age for the vast Roman Empire. Initial historical records indeed painted a picture of a benevolent and popular emperor, poised to lead Rome into a new era of prosperity and justice. This widespread acclaim was not merely a testament to Caligula's initial charm, but a reflection of the profound societal and political environment of the time. The Roman populace, accustomed to the spectacle of imperial power, craved strong leadership and public displays of beneficence. They had grown accustomed to the idea of a single guiding hand, and their memories of republican turmoil were distant, often romanticized. The political elite, meanwhile, had largely internalized the principate, understanding that their own influence depended on alignment with the imperial court. Dissent, though not entirely absent, was often muted, given the severe consequences of defying an emperor, as demonstrated by Tiberius's purges. The imperial cult, strategically cultivated by Augustus, had further elevated the emperor to a near-divine status, blurring the lines between man and God. This environment, fertile ground for ambition and unchecked authority, inadvertently paved the way for the radical transformation of the young emperor. Beneath this veneer of stability and popular acclaim, however, lay profound vulnerabilities within the very fabric of the imperial system itself. Absolute power, concentrated in the hands of a single individual, lacked the institutional checks and balances of the old republic. The emperor's personal whims could, and often did, become imperial decree, impacting millions across an expansive empire. There was no effective legal mechanism to challenge an emperor's decisions, nor any constitutional avenue to remove a ruler deemed unfit. The Praetorian Guard, while a source of strength, could also be a tool for oppression, their power used to enforce imperial will without question. This inherent structural weakness, this golden cage of power, invited not only corruption, but also the potential for severe psychological decay. The intoxicating nature of unchallenged authority could warp even the most stable minds, transforming promise into terrifying prerogative. These were the insidious seeds of what would later be described as madness, sown not merely by personal failing, but by the very system designed to govern Rome. The absence of effective restraints allowed human frailties, arrogance, paranoia, unchecked desire to metastasize into imperial policy. To truly comprehend the unprecedented tyranny that would soon grip Rome, we must first understand this foundational context. This fragile balance, this collective hope, and these systemic vulnerabilities are crucial threads in the unfolding tapestry of Caligula's reign. They underscore how a seemingly benevolent leader could transition so swiftly into a figure synonymous with imperial excess and brutality. This intricate background is not merely historical detail. It is the vital prelude to the storm, explaining how Rome became ripe for tyranny. The initial jubilation that swept Rome upon Caligula's ascension was a fragile thing, built on a foundation of unfulfilled hopes for stability after Tiberius's grim final years. Yet, beneath that golden veneer of youthful promise, a chilling darkness already stirred, a foreboding shadow waiting for its moment to consume the light. The honeymoon period, a brief reprieve of popularity and public goodwill, faded with alarming speed, revealing the nascent cracks in his seemingly benevolent facade. Early, unsettling signs of Caligula's erratic and often cruel nature began to surface, barely perceptible at first, then growing with terrifying clarity. One of the earliest indicators, a stark warning to those paying close attention, involved the fate of his own cousin, Tiberius Gemellus. Though Caligula had publicly adopted Gemellus, an heir designated by the dying Tiberius, it was a political maneuver, a deadly charade orchestrated for public approval. Within months of his accession, the young Gemellus was swiftly and ruthlessly executed, a chilling, unambiguous message sent to any potential rival or perceived threat. This brutal act starkly contradicted the image of the benevolent, compassionate emperor Rome had so desperately wished for, shattering their illusions prematurely. Simultaneously, Caligula began his deliberate and systematic disregard for the long-held traditions and established authority of the venerable Roman Senate. The Senate, for centuries, the bedrock of Roman governance and a formidable check on imperial power, found its influence rapidly eroding under his capricious will. Caligula increasingly favored his personal whims and decrees over the collective wisdom and counsel of the most esteemed men of Rome, asserting unchallenged authority. He openly mocked the very institutions that had granted him legitimacy, publicly humiliating senators and challenging their deeply ingrained sense of dignity. The phantom of the old Roman Republic, its ideals of shared power and civic duty, still haunted the empire. A ghost Caligula seemed determined to exercise forever. He sought not just to rule, but to dominate, to eradicate any vestige of a system where his authority might be questioned or constrained by senatorial prerogative. The early acts of cruelty soon extended beyond his family, frequently targeting the wealthy and influential, stripping them of their assets and their lives. Confiscation of property, often enacted for fabricated offences or minor slights, became a terrifyingly common tool to enrich his treasury and eliminate opposition. What he presented as justice was, to discerning eyes, merely a thinly veiled avarice, a desperate means to fund his extravagant public displays and personal indulgences. The so-called Pisonian conspiracy, a dubious plot, served as a convenient pretext for further purges, eliminating many who dared to voice quiet dissent. An insidious current of fear began to ripple through the upper echelons of Roman society, a pervasive dread that transcended mere political maneuvering. No one, it seemed, was truly safe from the emperor's arbitrary wrath, not even those who considered themselves closest to his inner circle. His megalomania, initially hidden, started to manifest in increasingly overt and outrageous ways, demanding reverence befitting a deity, not a mortal. Caligula began to openly demand divine honors while still alive, an unprecedented and sacrilegious act that shocked even the most hardened Roman cynics. The hallowed concept of princeps, the first citizen leading by example and consensus, was being grotesquely twisted beyond any recognizable definition. Caligula genuinely perceived himself not merely as the emperor, but as a living god, entitled to absolute dominion over all aspects of Roman life. This burgeoning asymmetry between his unchecked, escalating will and the traditional conservative Roman institutions became increasingly stark and perilous. The ancient mechanisms of power, designed for a different kind of ruler, struggled desperately to comprehend and cope with his accelerating descent into madness. The Senate, once a bastion of Roman authority, found itself increasingly paralyzed and powerless, unable to curb the whims of an emperor unbound by custom or law. Rome had no historical precedent, no legal framework to contend with such an extreme, escalating display of imperial megalomania and unbridled tyranny. Even the elite Praetorian Guard, once guardians of Rome's stability, became mere instruments of Caligula's will, loyal only to his personal commands. Their formidable military might, traditionally pledged to the empire, was now ruthlessly employed to enforce the emperor's every capricious and often cruel whim. Yet, even in this growing climate of terror and subjugation, the seeds of quiet defiance and strategic wit were beginning to be sown in the hidden corners of Rome. These acts of subtle resistance, though small at first, represented a flickering flame of hope against the encroaching shadow of absolute tyranny. A storm was undeniably brewing within the heart of Rome, threatening to engulf not just the emperor, but the very fabric of the empire itself. The veneer of sanity, thin as it was, now completely dissolved, plunging Rome into an abyss of unprecedented tyranny. Gaius, once hailed as a hopeful successor, fully unleashed the madness lurking beneath his imperial facade. The emperor abandoned all pretense of traditional Roman governance, embracing a terrifying new reality for the empire. He declared himself a living god, a Jupiter incarnate, walking among mortals, shocking the very core of Roman sensibilities. This was no mere megalomania. It was a calculated assault on the Roman worldview, where emperors became deified only after death. Caligula demanded immediate, unequivocal worship from all, forcing senators and citizens alike to prostrate themselves before him. Temples were dedicated, statues erected in his divine image, blurring the lines between mortal ruler and celestial deity. This audacious move systematically eroded the traditional power structures that had defined Rome for centuries. The venerated Senate, once a bastion of influence, found itself utterly emasculated, a mere echo chamber for Caligula's increasingly bizarre demands. He subjected senators to public humiliation, forced them into degrading tasks, and often mocked their authority directly. The infamous suggestion of appointing his horse, Incitatus, as consul, though possibly exaggerated, perfectly illustrates his contempt. This wasn't just the caprice of a madman. It was a deliberate, strategic dismantling of Roman political dignity. A chilling wave of purges swept through Rome, targeting the elite, the powerful, and the wealthy. Fear became the dominant currency, as whispers of disloyalty, or even just a glance deemed disrespectful, could lead to swift, brutal execution. Respectable citizens, even close advisors, vanished, their property confiscated by the ever-ravenous imperial treasury. These purges often lacked any credible evidence, driven instead by paranoia, avarice, or simple, sadistic pleasure. Rome's most distinguished families were decimated, their legacies shattered under the weight of Caligula's unpredictable wrath. This pervasive dread cast a long, suffocating shadow across the entire city, paralyzing dissent. Yet, even within this suffocating atmosphere, a subtle, strategic wit began to emerge among those determined to survive. Survival demanded a new kind of bravery, a quiet ingenuity in navigating the emperor's treacherous whims. Many perfected the art of invisibility, meticulously avoiding imperial notice, retreating from public life. Others engaged in a more nuanced passive resistance, maintaining Roman dignity through symbolic acts of defiance or calculated ambiguity. Even during Caligula's most absurd military campaigns, a semblance of order and strategic mitigation was sought. His notorious invasion of Britain stands as a testament to his erratic genius and contempt for military tradition. He marched his legions to the English Channel, then ordered them to collect seashells as spoils of war, a grotesque mockery of Roman military prowess. This act revealed his utter disdain for the legions, the very foundation of Rome's might, treating seasoned soldiers as pawns in his theatrical madness. Nevertheless, even in this farce, some commanders found discreet ways to buffer the most destructive commands. They executed his orders with meticulous, literal precision, yet subtly engineered outcomes that minimized actual harm or resource expenditure. The infamous seashell collection, for all its absurdity, allowed the legions to return without engaging in a costly, pointless invasion. These small, strategic acts of calculated obedience preserved the strength and lives of many soldiers. The quiet heroism of individuals became the bedrock of Rome's enduring spirit during this dark era. Historians and scribes, risking their lives, continued to record events, ensuring that truth, however suppressed, would eventually surface. Roman citizens, though forced into submission, often found subtle ways to retain their dignity and heritage. They refused to fully abandon their traditions, performing their duties with an internal fortitude that belied external compliance. The very idea of Romanitas, of civic duty, honor, and the enduring strength of the Republic persisted despite imperial attempts to crush it. This was Rome enduring its darkest hour, a testament to its profound ancient resilience. The seeds of liberation, planted in fear but nurtured by an unwavering, quiet defiance, would inevitably begin to sprout. The shadow of Caligula's tyranny had suffocated Rome for years, each day bringing fresh indignities and ever more grotesque acts of imperial madness. His reign had become a brutal parody of power, turning citizens into terrified subjects, senators into groveling sycophants, and the empire into a personal playground. Yet, even in the darkest corners of the imperial court, a flicker of resistance began to stir, born from desperation and an unyielding love for Rome. Whispers of dissent, once fleeting and dangerous, started to coalesce into a clandestine network, weaving through the corridors of the Palatine Hill and beyond. It was among the Praetorian Guard, the very protectors of the Emperor, that the seeds of a definitive plot found fertile ground. Ironically, within his inner circle, their unique position offered both the greatest risk and the most potent opportunity to break the iron grip of a ruler who deemed himself a living god. At the heart of this burgeoning conspiracy stood Cassius Chaerea, a tribune of the Praetorian Guard, whose military career had been marred by Caligula's relentless mockery. Chaerea, a seasoned veteran, endured constant ridicule for his supposedly effeminate voice, a profound insult that fueled a quiet, burning rage within him. Alongside him was Cornelius Sabinus, another respected tribune, whose commitment to Roman ideals transcended any personal loyalty to the emperor. Disgruntled senators, their honor and dignity systematically stripped away, also joined the growing chorus, weary of the constant threat to their lives and families. Men like Valerius Asiaticus, a prominent and wealthy figure, lent their influence and resources motivated by the preservation of the Republic's memory, if not its reality. The conspiracy was a fragile alliance, a mosaic of diverse grievances, yet united by a common enemy and a shared, profound desire for liberation. Historical records suggest that the precise formation of this core group was gradual, evolving from hushed complaints into daring, direct planning. Early attempts at resistance had been fragmented and easily suppressed, highlighting the immense difficulty and peril of challenging an absolute monarch. This time, however, the conspirators understood the necessity of meticulous strategic planning, turning their intimate knowledge of the palace into an advantage. Their most critical task was to identify the perfect moment, a window of opportunity where Caligula would be vulnerable and their actions decisive. The annual Palatine Games offered precisely such a chance, drawing vast crowds and providing a chaotic backdrop amidst which an assassination could occur. Caligula, a passionate devotee of spectacles, would be immersed in the performances, his guard perhaps momentarily lowered by the festive atmosphere. Strategic analysis indicates the conspirators leveraged this predictable routine, recognizing the emperor's habits as his greatest weakness. Intricate planning involved assigning specific roles: who would strike, who would secure the exits, and who would ensure no immediate loyalist retaliation. Chaerea, with his military precision, orchestrated the details, ensuring each conspirator understood their mission within the complex high-stakes operation. The tension mounted on the day of the Games, January 24, 41 AD, as Caligula attended the theatrical performances in the Cryptoporticus. The emperor, having watched the morning plays, was making his way through a secluded passage connecting the theater to his private apartments for lunch. This narrow, enclosed corridor, usually sparsely guarded, was the chosen ambush point, a daring move within the heart of imperial power. Chaerea confronted Caligula, reportedly requesting the password for the day, and as the emperor replied, the tribune struck the first decisive blow. With a swift, powerful thrust of his sword, Chaerea plunged it into Caligula's neck, a moment of extraordinary courage that instantly shattered the imperial facade. Other conspirators, including Sabinus, immediately joined in the attack, overwhelming Caligula's few personal German bodyguards in a ferocious, chaotic struggle. The sudden, brutal assault left the emperor with over 30 wounds, a definitive end to his reign of terror, witnessed by a handful of terrified bystanders. Panic erupted as news of the assassination spread, but the Praetorian Guard, largely complicit in the plot, moved swiftly to secure the palace and prevent loyalist uprisings. This audacious act was not merely regicide. It was a desperate, courageous declaration that Rome would not be held captive by a single madman's whim. The conspirators, risking everything, embodied the enduring spirit of a city pushed to its absolute breaking point, yet finding the will to fight for its future. In that dark corridor, amidst the clash of steel and the cries of betrayal, Rome took a definitive stand against the tyranny that sought to consume its very soul. Their bravery echoed through the annals of history, a stark, powerful reminder that even the most absolute power can crumble before the collective will of a people. The blade fell, severing not just a life, but the fragile illusion of an emperor's divine right. Rome, for a terrifying moment, hung suspended in a vacuum of power, teetering on the precipice of civil war. Chaos erupted in the imperial palace, a maelstrom of fear and ambition. Whispers of a senatorial republic reborn clashed with the clang of legionary armor. The Senate, long suppressed under Caligula's thumb, saw a fleeting, desperate opportunity. They deliberated feverishly, dreaming of reclaiming their ancient authority, a forlorn hope against overwhelming odds. Yet, the true power lay not in the hallowed halls of the Senate, but with the Praetorian Guard, the emperor's elite bodyguards. They had made an emperor, and they would make another. These seasoned warriors, instrumental in Caligula's demise, knew the price of an empty throne. Their loyalty was to the imperial office and to themselves, ensuring their continued influence. Hidden and terrified amidst the palace's aftermath, they found Tiberius Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, Caligula's uncle. An unlikely figure, trembling behind a curtain, thrust into an impossible crucible. The Praetorians, in a bold move of historical defiance, proclaimed Claudius emperor. They presented him to the people, bypassing the Senate's customary acclamation, asserting military primacy. The Senate, faced with this fait accompli and the formidable Praetorian legions, had little choice but to concede. The Republic's brief, hopeful flicker was extinguished by military might. Claudius ascended to power, a stuttering, awkward scholar whose legitimacy was initially overshadowed by the violent circumstances of his elevation. He was a reluctant emperor, yet a necessary one. The deep scars left by Caligula's tyranny were profound, both physically and psychologically. Rome had endured an emperor who embodied unbridled, destructive power. The city grappled with the trauma, the lingering fear of another descent into madness. Rome's institutions, though shaken, held firm, a testament to their enduring strength. The immediate imperative was to restore order and re-establish trust in the imperial office. Claudius, despite his perceived weaknesses, understood this fundamental requirement. His strategic genius lay not in military prowess, but in meticulous administration and a pragmatic approach to governance. He began the painstaking process of healing Rome. Claudius shrewdly initiated policies aimed at stability, restoring financial solvency, and punishing those who had directly profited from Caligula's depravity, signaling a new era of accountability. He skillfully navigated the treacherous political landscape, asserting his authority while extending an olive branch to the wary Senate, acknowledging their crucial, if diminished, role. The era of Caligula offered a stark lesson: the perilous danger of unchecked imperial power. It revealed how quickly absolute authority could corrupt and consume. It underscored the fragility of a system reliant on a single individual's temperament, exposing the deep vulnerabilities within the nascent imperial structure itself. Historians and strategists alike observed the Roman state's extraordinary capacity to self-correct, even after enduring such a devastating period of rule. This was no ordinary survival. This period forced a crucial evolution within the Principate, steering it away from the arbitrary whims of an absolute monarch towards a more bureaucratic, institutionalized form of governance. Claudius systematically reinforced the administrative apparatus, creating new departments and empowering skilled freedmen, thereby strengthening the foundations of imperial rule. His reign initiated a period of significant infrastructural development, reflecting a pragmatic focus on the welfare and stability of the empire, a stark contrast to his predecessor. The Roman system, though imperial, demonstrated an astounding resilience. It could, when pushed to its limits, purge the madness and continue its unbroken historical legacy. This capacity for institutional survival, for adapting and overcoming profound internal crises, is a hallmark of Rome's enduring greatness, a lesson for all subsequent empires. The empire learned to integrate the trauma of tyranny, to fortify itself against future excesses rather than collapsing. It evolved, growing stronger from its near-fatal experience. Caligula's reign, while a dark chapter, ultimately contributed to the maturation of the Roman imperial system. It forged a more robust, if sometimes autocratic, framework. This critical juncture highlighted the enduring power of Rome's institutional framework over any single ruler, proving that the state transcended individual personalities. Expert analysis reveals this period as pivotal, demonstrating Rome's commitment to its own continuity and its remarkable ability to purge destructive elements from within its leadership. The lessons absorbed from Caligula's tyranny profoundly shaped the expectations for subsequent emperors, encouraging a more cautious, pragmatic approach to power. The survival of Rome through such an extreme crisis became a powerful testament to its inherent strength and the unwavering spirit of its people and institutions. This remarkable recovery solidified the understanding that Rome was more than an emperor. It was an idea, a system, and a civilization capable of enduring any challenge. The foundations laid in the aftermath of Caligula's rule ensured the continuation of an imperial legacy that would span centuries, a monument to human resilience and adaptation. This chapter in Roman history serves as a powerful reminder of how a society can resist and ultimately overcome even the most insidious forms of internal oppression. It is a story of national heroism, not just in military might, but in the unwavering commitment to the integrity and continuity of the Roman state, against all odds. The aftermath of Caligula's tyranny became a crucible, refining Rome's imperial system and solidifying the framework that would define much of its future existence. This monumental effort of rebuilding and re-establishing order cemented the legacy of institutional resilience, proving Rome's indomitable spirit would always prevail. Thus, the Eternal City endured, not merely surviving Caligula's madness, but reaffirming the profound resilience woven into the very fabric of its ancient institutions. This period is a testament to Rome's indomitable spirit. Against the monstrous shadow of internal tyranny, Rome's strategic wit and collective spirit emerged, proving its extraordinary capacity to self-correct and overcome even its own darkest impulses. This epic struggle, meticulously documented in historical records, showcases how a civilization can rally its forces, both overt and covert, to protect its fundamental values from within. The Praetorian Guard's calculated intervention and the Senate's quiet resolve were not just acts of rebellion, but strategic maneuvers to restore stability to a faltering empire. It was a powerful testament to the triumph of institutional strength over individual caprice, a foundational principle for any enduring society's stability and future governance. The profound significance of Rome's resistance against Caligula echoes across millennia, offering invaluable lessons on vigilance and the enduring need for checks on absolute power. This narrative illuminates the vital role of civic courage and strategic foresight in safeguarding the foundations of national identity against internal threats, a truly universal insight. At Echoes of Antiquity, we are committed to unraveling these cinematic histories, presenting the epic struggles and unparalleled heroism that forged the destiny of ancient civilizations. Join our growing community of passionate history enthusiasts. Explore more meticulously researched stories and deep dives into the strategic brilliance and human drama that shaped our world. Subscribe to Echoes of Antiquity, activate notifications, and embark with us on countless future journeys into the captivating, untold depths of humanity's magnificent past.